You forgot me. Don't look behind the mirror.
At exactly 3:17 a.m., a single knock echoed through the bedroom wall. Same time, same spot, every night. But apartment 2C was supposed to be empty. And this time, the knock came with a whisper. You forgot me. In a gentrifying corner of Brooklyn, Kenya Willis, a 32-year-old black single mother and part-time paralegal, moves into an old brownstone apartment with her 9-year-old daughter, Maya. The building is quiet, the rent is suspiciously low, and her landlord insists apartment 2C next door is sealed and vacant. But soon after moving in, Kenya begins hearing faint knocks on the shared bedroom wall, always at exactly 3:17 a.m. At first, she blames plumbing or a dream. But Maya starts waking with night terrors, whispering about a man with the wrong face watching her sleep. No one believes her, not her new neighbors, not the police, not even her sister. But when Kenya finally drills a small hole through the wall, what she sees rewrites everything she thought she knew about the building and herself. Quick heads up before we jump in. If you're into real stories, strange disappearances, and the kind of truths people try to bury, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell so you don't miss what comes next. All right, let's get into it. Kenya hated the silence. Not the kind that came with solitude or peace. She'd learned to love that, but the deep, uncanny stillness that crept into places too old to forget their own stories. Their new apartment had that kind of quiet. The kind that hummed just under the drywall, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. It had been a long move. Her arms ached from unpacking, and Maya had been unusually quiet all day. Not that Kenya blamed her new school, new neighborhood, and they'd left behind everything familiar in Flatbush after the break-in. After him. The bedroom was small but cozy. Cream-colored walls, hardwood floors, one window overlooking a narrow alley. Kenya tucked the last of the sheets under the mattress and sat on the edge of the bed. Maya was already curled up under her blanket in the corner, hugging the same teddy bear since she was 2. You good, baby? Kenya asked softly. Maya nodded, but didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the wall to her right. Too quiet? Kenya guessed. Maya blinked slowly. It's listening. Kenya smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. She reached over and smoothed the little girl's hair. Ain't nobody listening to us, okay? This place is old, that's all. Just wood and pipes. Not the wall, Maya whispered. The man. Kenya's hand froze. She leaned in. What man? Maya pointed to the wall beside her bed, the one shared with the supposedly empty apartment next door. He's behind there. I saw his eye. Kenya exhaled hard through her nose. Baby, there's nobody there. The landlord said it's vacant, remember? No tenants in 2C. Just junk storage. Maya didn't argue. She just rolled to the other side and pulled the blanket up over her head. Kenya turned off the lamp and climbed into her own bed. She stared at the same wall. Pale beige, smooth, still smelling like fresh paint. Empty, she told herself. Nobody lived there. Still, she left the hallway light on. 3:17 knock. Kenya shot upright, heart hammering. Not loud, just a single knock. Hollow, precise. It came from the wall. She waited. Silence. Then, this time, she threw the covers off and swung her legs over the edge. The floorboards creaked under her bare feet. She crossed the room slowly, holding her breath, and placed her ear against the wall. Nothing. She knocked back once tentative, absurd, but nothing responded. She checked on Maya. The child was curled tight, sweating, murmuring something in her sleep. Kenya sat beside her, brushing a damp curl off her forehead. Wrong face, Maya mumbled. Wrong face, wrong. The next morning, Kenya knocked on the landlord's door before school drop-off. Mr. Drayton was a wide-shouldered Dominican man in his 60s, always wearing slacks and undershirts, with a limp that came and went depending on whether rent was due. He greeted her with a half-smile and a distracted nod. "Hey, Miss Willis, all good? Do you have anyone staying in 2C? His face went still. "Nah, 2C's been empty for years. Old tenant passed away in there. Place still boxed up." "Why?" Kenya hesitated. "We heard something last night. A knock. Around 3. Drayton waved a dismissive hand. "Old pipes. Trust me, this building talks sometimes. You get used to it." "I've lived in Brooklyn my whole life," she said. "That wasn't pipes." He looked at her a second too long. Then, "Look, you're safe. No one's been in there. You want? I'll show you the lock later. Nobody's got the key but me." Kenya didn't reply, because in her gut deep, cold, and unwelcome, she knew something wasn't right. That night, she put Maya in her bed and turned on her phone's voice recorder. She slid the device between her pillow and the wall. Then she waited. 3:17. A knock. Whisper. She couldn't make out the words this time. But when she played back the audio, "You forgot me," Kenya dropped the phone. And for the first time since moving in, she wondered if they should have taken that other apartment, the one across town, the one that didn't come with a silence that listened back. Kenya stared at the phone on the nightstand, like it might explode. The voice was there, clearer than she remembered, slurred, like someone whispering through gauze. She played the clip again with headphones this time, shielding Maya from the sound. And there it was, steady and broken. "You forgot me." Kenya felt something tighten in her chest. Her thumb hovered over the delete button, but she didn't press it. Instead, she opened her phone's notes app and typed, 3:17 a.m., second knock, voice captured, apartment 2C. Maya says wrong face. She wasn't going crazy. She refused to be. But whatever this was plumbing didn't talk. Later that morning, Kenya stood outside 2C. The hallway was cold, despite the summer heat outside. Something about the lighting here always looked dimmer. Fluorescence hummed above her, barely cutting through the shadows. The door to 2C looked just like hers off-white paint, brass numbers worn to a dull bronze. But the keyhole had a thick layer of dust over it. No footsteps on the mat. No trash. No smell of life. Just stillness. She pressed her palm against the door. Cold. Too cold. She crouched and looked through the bottom crack. Nothing but black. No light inside. No motion. No window facing the alley like hers. She hadn't noticed that before. But now that she thought about it, how did 2C not have a window? "Miss Willis?" Kenya jumped. It was Mr. Drayton again, holding a box of tools and raising a bushy brow. "You good?" Kenya straightened. "I just remembered you said this was storage." He grunted. "Still is. Doesn't it have a window?" "Mine does." He frowned. "Nah, that side of the building's bricked in. Never had one." Kenya didn't reply. She glanced back at the door. He caught her hesitation. "Look, I can show you inside. If it'll help." She turned to him, surprised. "Really?" Drayton dug in his pocket, pulled out a fat key ring. "Yeah, I mean if it'll keep your mind at ease. Can't have y'all losing sleep over rats in the wall or ghosts or whatever." He slid the key into the lock. It stuck. He jiggled it. Swore under his breath. Kenya watched his hands. He was forcing it. "Damn thing's rusted shut," he muttered. "Ain't been opened in a minute." With one hard jerk, the bolt clicked. The door creaked inward. The first thing that hit her was the air thick and stale, like an attic sealed since the Reagan years. It smelled of paper, mildew, and something faintly chemical, the kind of air that held breath long after someone was gone. Inside was darkness. No light bulbs, no windows, just narrow shelves stacked with boxes, newspapers, and yellowing manila folders tied with string. The room wasn't much bigger than her living room. See? Drayton stepped in casually. Nothing but old records. Stuff from the original landlord. Been meaning to toss most of it. Kenya stayed by the threshold, unwilling to follow. Her eyes darted across the room. No furniture, no mattresses, no signs of squatters. But one corner, just to the left, had scratches. Faint lines carved into the drywall. Parallel, uneven, desperate. Claw marks. "You said someone died in here?" she asked. Drayton turned. "Who told you that?" "You did. Yesterday. Said the last tenant passed away in here." He frowned. "I said that?" She nodded. He stared at her for a long second, then turned away. "Must have been thinking of another unit. My bad." She didn't believe him. She wasn't even sure he believed him. As she stepped back into the hall, a weight pressed against her chest. Like the air in that room had followed her out, clinging to her skin. Before he shut the door, she caught a glimpse of something at the back wall. A small, square shape. A mirror half covered with an old bedsheet, but she didn't say a word. Because when the light caught the glass, she could swear the reflection wasn't hers. That night, Maya refused to sleep in her room. "I'll be quiet," she whispered. "I won't make noise. Just let me sleep in yours." Kenya relented. She tucked her daughter into the left side of the bed and turned the phone's recorder on again. She placed it between the wall and the headboard. But this time, she added her old phone positioned closer, at the floor level near the baseboards. She was going to catch this thing, whatever it was. 317A. Knock. Knock. Sesh. Kenya's eyes snapped open. She didn't move. Didn't breathe, because this time it wasn't the wall. It was under the bed. Something was dragging lightly along the wood. She reached for her phone with trembling fingers, checked the time. 3:17 a.m. Exactly. The dragging stopped. Then, thump. A soft impact against the baseboard, like a hand hitting the wall from the other side. Maya whimpered in her sleep. Kenya leaned over the bed, holding her phone's flashlight to the floor. Nothing, just shadows. But when she played back the audio in the morning, something new appeared. 2 whispers this time. The first, "You forgot me." The second fainter, closer to the floor. "Don't look behind the mirror." Kenya didn't touch her phone for 5 hours after hearing it. She sat in the kitchen with a blanket around her shoulders, clutching a chipped coffee mug with nothing in it. The whisper played in her mind like it had been stitched into her skull. Don't look behind the mirror. But it wasn't a warning. It didn't sound panicked or scared. It sounded calm, controlled, like someone stating a fact they already knew you'd ignore. At noon, Maya was at school, and Kenya stood in the hallway staring at her wall. Beyond it, just inches away, was the mirror she'd seen inside 2C, the one half covered with the old sheet. She could have asked Drayton to unlock it again, but she didn't trust him. No, she wanted no one else there when she checked. She waited until 4:12 p.m., when Drayton usually left for evening dominoes at the corner bodega. She peeked through the window, saw his old Caprice back out, then grabbed the wire hanger she'd flattened and twisted the night before. The lock on 2C clicked open on her third try. The room smelled even worse now, sour and wet, like rotting books and basement rain. She stepped inside, flashlight in one hand, her phone camera rolling in the other. There it was, the mirror. Roughly 3 feet tall, rectangular, its wood frame stained black by age. It leaned against the back wall, a thick sheet draped over most of it. But one side was exposed, dusty and cracked, like a spiderweb frozen in glass. She stood before it, heart thudding. Her flashlight trembled in her grip. The beam wavered over the mirror's edge. She gripped the corner of the sheet and pulled. Nothing happened. The full mirror came into view. There was no reflection, not like a normal one. No image of her face, no room behind her, no ceiling, just darkness. Like looking into a well. She waved her hand. Nothing changed. She tapped the glass with her knuckle. Dull, like the back was hollow. Kenya backed up, heart racing. She crouched, searching the edges. That's when she saw it. A faint seam along the base. Dust patterns broken by a clean line. The mirror wasn't just sitting there. It was mounted into a panel set, into the wall like a door. Her hands moved before her brain gave permission. She pressed at the corners. Nothing budged. She stood, looked around the room. Her eyes landed on a long metal rod resting on one of the nearby crates. She wedged it under the seam and pried. Something cracked. The mirror shifted with a dry groan, and cold air kissed her face. Dust spilled down. She pulled again, and it opened just slightly. An inch-wide gap. Behind it, pitch black. Kenya aimed her flashlight into the gap. The beam disappeared, swallowed. Like light itself couldn't exist back there. She didn't speak, didn't breathe, just listened. And then, from somewhere deep inside that darkness, thud, thud, not random, not frantic. 3 slow knocks from inside the wall. Kenya dropped the rod. She closed the mirror and backed away, nearly stumbling over a crate. A whisper returned in her head. Don't look behind the mirror. Too late. She didn't sleep that night. Maya curled beside her, thumb in her mouth, one fist tight around her teddy bear. Kenya lay awake, staring at the ceiling. At 3:17 a.m., the knock came again, but this time from inside her closet. She sat up, holding her breath. The sound repeated. 3 knocks, same rhythm, same message. She rose and opened the door slowly. Nothing inside. But on the closet wall facing her was a single word smeared in something black and dry. Remember. The next day, Kenya drove across town to St. Augustine Psychiatric Center. She hadn't planned to, hadn't told anyone. But that morning, while searching her building's original property records in the public office database, she'd seen something strange, an emergency commitment order dated July 1993. In the tenant records for apartment 2C, the patient's name, Marcus D. Haynes, age 19, involuntary hold. Residence, 2C West Halsey Street. But the section labeled diagnosis had been scratched out, replaced with a red stamp, unconfirmed. She sat in the psych center's lobby, fingers curled tight around the visitor clipboard. A nurse approached. You here for someone, miss? Kenya nodded. I just need information about a former patient. Name? Marcus Haynes. The nurse frowned. You family? Kenya hesitated. I think I might have known him. The nurse looked her over, then leaned down. That name sounded familiar, she whispered, but he wasn't just any patient. Kenya leaned closer. He was one of the Echo 5. Kenya blinked. The what? The nurse glanced around, then lowered her voice. It's old now, before my time. But the story still floats. There was a boy here, quiet, said he lived in a wall. Kenya's blood ran cold. The nurse continued. He claimed someone taught him to disappear. Said he could move between houses if they remembered his name. But one day he went quiet. They checked the rooms, but they never found him again. Kenya whispered. He escaped? The nurse shook her head. No. Her eyes locked with Kenya's. They say he never left. He just learned how to hide better. Kenya sat in her car outside the psych center for nearly 30 minutes after the nurse walked away. He said he lived in a wall. Those words stuck like needles under her skin. The nurse hadn't smiled, hadn't looked like she was joking, and the phrase Echo 5 kept circling her mind like a chant trying to make itself remembered. She pulled up the local archive site on her phone and typed it in. Echo 5 plus Marcus Haynes plus 1993. Nothing. She tried a broader search. Brooklyn psychiatric patients 1993 disappearance. One result came up an old article, barely scanned, from the Brooklyn Ledger, July 22, 1993. Headline: Teen patient missing from St. Augustine Wing 5 no signs of exit. Subheading: Fourth disappearance this year from the facility's disused East Corridor. The article was vague. The boy's name was redacted in the online version, but the wording was haunting. Facility staff reported the room was still locked from the inside. No windows, no signs of forced exit. Surveillance was inconclusive. No body was found. The hallway has since been shuttered pending investigation. We believe these young men are not victims, said one former orderly. They found a way to move through things we can't see. They called themselves the Echo 5. Kenya stared at the screen, mouth slightly open. She scrolled to the bottom. A small picture, grainy, black and white. 5 boys, barely out of their teens, standing shoulder to shoulder in hospital gowns, all of them staring into the camera with hollow eyes. She zoomed in on the third boy from the left. Dark-skinned, close-cut hair, thin scar under his eye. One hand partially raised, mid-gesture. She swore she'd seen that hand before. She checked the photo's caption. Group therapy intake, 1993. Names withheld. But in the top corner of the image, barely visible, someone had scribbled in red ink. Haynes? That night, Kenya brought her toolkit inside from the car. Maya was asleep. The hallway was quiet. The whole building seemed to pulse with a hush, like it was waiting. She stood in front of her closet, staring at the words still etched on the inside wall. Remember. She crouched, ran her fingers along the floorboards, and found what she suspected, an uneven seam between the closet and the wall. A fake panel. She could feel the hollowness behind it now. She wedged the screwdriver beneath the trim. With a crack, the board popped loose. A faint draft kissed her cheeks. There was a crawl space, just barely wide enough for a body. And at the back of it something glinted. Kenya reached in, knuckles brushing cobwebs, and pulled it out. A cassette tape, labeled in shaky handwriting. The Checo test. 317 aim. Her hands trembled. She didn't own a tape player, but she knew someone who might. The next day, Kenya stood outside the thrift store off Myrtle Avenue, the one run by her Aunt Char. Inside, among used furniture and cracked vinyl, Aunt Char kept a whole box of old radios and broken electronics. 10 minutes later, Kenya walked out with a dusty black cassette player with masking tape labeled Works. She didn't wait. She popped the tape in, pressed play. For a second, nothing. Just static. Then a voice. Young, male, unsteady. My name is Marcus Haynes, age 19. West Halsey Street. Apartment 2C. My mother told them I had schizophrenia, but I see them. The places behind the drywall. Where sound lives. Kenya's eyes widened. They think the knocks are hallucinations. But I counted them. 3 knocks mean the path is open. You listen long enough, the walls tell you secrets. We were 5. Me, Diane, Lil Rel, Caleb, and Thomas. We listened together. Now I'm the last. Every time someone forgets me, the path closes. But if someone remembers, the echo stays open. And if they look behind the mirror, silence. Then a final whisper. I can find my way back. The tape ended. Kenya's chest felt tight, like the air had thickened around her. She pressed stop. Echo 5, she whispered. 5 boys. 5 disappearances. But Marcus had found something the others didn't. And now he wanted back. That night, Kenya didn't sleep in her bedroom. She pulled Maya's mattress into the living room, and they curled up together on the floor. Kenya kept her tools close, flashlight in hand, phone recording again. But at 3:17 a.m., the knock didn't come from the wall. This time, it came from inside the television. She turned toward the screen. It was off, unplugged. But the static started anyway. Gray flicker. No signal. Then, a face. Half-formed, shadowed, staring out. Mouth not moving, but a voice came through the static anyway. "Why did you open it?" Kenya backed away, dragging Maya with her. The girl stirred, eyes wide. "What's happening?" Maya asked, barely awake. Kenya whispered, "Nothing, baby. Just static." But deep in the walls, something was moving. Kenya didn't take her eyes off the unplugged TV. The face was still there. No mouth, no nose. Just the faint outline of a human head inside a sea of static like a photo being developed backward. But its eyes, or where the eyes should have been, were fixed on her. And though it didn't speak with lips, a sound vibrated low through the floorboards. "Why did you open it?" Then the screen snapped black. The TV was silent again, dead as it should have been. Kenya scooped Maya off the mattress and backed into the kitchen, fumbling for the drawer with the emergency flashlight and the hammer. She handed Maya the flashlight. "Shine it in the corner. Keep it steady. Mommy. Don't cry, just shine." Kenya marched back into the living room, heart pounding. The air felt charged, like lightning was coiled in the walls. For a second, she considered smashing the TV, but something stopped her, because as strange as it was, it hadn't tried to hurt them. Not yet. It spoke. It watched. It warned. And she needed to know why. At sunrise, Kenya sat on the stoop outside, eyes red and swollen. She hadn't slept, not even a minute. Maya finally drifted off in the makeshift mattress fort she'd built in the hallway, far from the shared wall. Kenya held her notebook, writing, sketching, listening back to the tape again, replaying the words. If someone remembers, the echo stays open. And if they look behind the mirror, I can find my way back. She thought back to the old photo, the Echo 5, Marcus, Dion, Lil Rel, Caleb, Thomas, 4 gone, 1 still whispering. Or maybe more. If Marcus had figured out how to live between spaces, between walls, what if the others had too? What if the knocking wasn't him anymore? What if someone else found the mirror after Marcus vanished? She circled one sentence in her notebook over and over. I'm the last, but something about that didn't feel true. That afternoon, she took Maya to her sister Ayana's apartment in Queens. I just need you to watch her for a night or two, Kenya said, brushing Maya's curls from her forehead. Tell her it's a sleepover. Ayana raised an eyebrow. This got anything to do with that cheap brownstone you moved into? Kenya said nothing. Ayana sighed. All right, but if you don't pick up your phone, I'm calling Mama. Kenya managed to smile. That's fair. She kissed Maya's cheek and whispered, Be good, baby. Mommy's gonna fix something. I'll be back soon. Maya didn't look convinced. She clutched Kenya's hand tight before letting go. As Kenya stepped back out into the summer evening, the streets felt wrong. Too quiet for a Saturday. Too many windows watching. She caught her own reflection in a car mirror, and for a split second, her reflection didn't move when she did. She blinked. Gone. Back at the apartment, the air was thick with something old. It was in the walls now. She could feel it, like being inside someone's rib cage, and the lungs around her were holding breath. Kenya turned on all the lights, laid her tools on the coffee table. She grabbed a stack of sticky notes and began labeling. TV, closet wall, shared bedroom wall, behind mirror in 2C. Cassette, echo test. Missing window in 2C. Then she taped a photo of Marcus Haynes next to it, the zoomed-in scan she'd printed from the psych ward group shot. She stared at it a long time. "Where are you?" she asked the photo. The walls creaked. At 3:17 a.m., it didn't start with a knock this time. It started with footsteps. From inside the walls. Kenya stood barefoot in the living room. Every light off, phone camera on, flashlight dimmed. The footsteps were slow, dragging. From the left side of the apartment to the right, through the drywall. Then, knock, knock, knock. But this time, from the ceiling, Kenya looked up slowly. A single line of dust shook loose from the corner tile. Then something else, something that made her knees buckle slightly. A whisper came from the ceiling. Soft, raspy, close. "He lied," Kenya whispered back. "Who lied?" No answer. Then, BANG. Something slammed directly above her. So hard the ceiling cracked. Kenya stumbled back, chest heaving. She pointed her flashlight straight up. Her mouth dropped open. There were fingers, 5 of them, pressing through the ceiling tile. Long, thin, almost translucent. The drywall crumbled as they flexed, and retreated. Gone. She backed into the kitchen, slammed the door, and slid to the floor. She knew what the voice meant now. Marcus didn't want to be remembered. He wanted the door opened, but someone else wanted it closed. Someone who'd been there longer. Someone forgotten deeper. The static. The fake reflections. The whispers that didn't match the voice on the tape. Kenya flipped to a clean page in her notebook and wrote one sentence. If Marcus was the last echo, who is the static? Kenya didn't sleep. Not even a blink. The apartment felt like it had shifted, like the walls had taken a breath in and never let it out. Her body ached from stillness, but her mind raced like a scratched record. The ceiling, the fingers, the whisper. He lied. And now, a question etched itself, deeper than fear ever had. Had she opened the door for the wrong person? She gathered every note, photo, and taped message and spread them across the dining table. All of it. The crude floor plan she'd drawn, the time-stamped whispers, the scrawled transcript of the Marcus tape. Then she opened her laptop and did what she'd avoided all week. She searched for Diane Holloway, Lil Rel, Caleb Doucette, and Thomas Ellison, the other boys from the Echo 5. Her heart nearly stopped when she found the first hit. Thomas Ellison, missing teen still unfound after 30 years. Photo attached, but it wasn't a mugshot or news portrait. It was a black and white scan of an ID badge. St. Augustine's psychiatric intern. Thomas hadn't been a patient. He'd been staff. Kenya leaned forward. The article detailed a 19-year-old night orderly who worked in Wing 5. Went missing after his 3rd shift. His parents insisted he was coerced into silence. He'd told them the other boys weren't sick. They were attuned. He believed they could speak in echo patterns, the mother had told the reporter, that they'd found a way to communicate through spaces no one else could hear. Kenya blinked hard. Thomas was the 5th, not Marcus. The last to go missing was not a patient. But Marcus claimed he was the last. He lied. She whispered the words to herself, over and over, as her brain rearranged the truth. Marcus wasn't warning her. Marcus was waiting. And he had been, for decades, behind the mirror, inside the echoes, for someone to open the path. And she had. She returned to apartment 2C with a crowbar. No flashlight. No phone. Just gloves and silence. She pried open the mirror panel again. The crawl space gaped wide before her. She hadn't gone inside the first time. Not really. But now she needed answers no one else would give her. She tied a scarf around her face, flicked on her headlamp, and crawled in. It was tight, suffocating. Fiberglass scratched at her arms. Her knees knocked against pipes and rotted boards. and the space widened. Not enough for standing, but enough to move on all fours. And then stairs. Not full steps. Just jagged concrete ridges in a spiral, leading downward. Hidden beneath the brownstone. This wasn't in any blueprint. She followed them, each step echoing deeper into the dark. After what felt like 15 minutes, she reached a metal door. Rusted, bolted from the inside. She raised the crowbar. Struck hard. The door creaked open. And beyond it, a room. A forgotten underground chamber with peeling green tiles and flickering fluorescent tubes wired crudely into the ceiling. Piles of old VHS tapes, notebooks, and Polaroids sat in the corners. A desk with claw marks across the surface. And in the middle, bolted to the floor, a dentist's chair. She stepped closer. The chair straps were torn, dried with brown-black stains. The armrests gouged with fingernail cuts. On the wall behind it, lined across like trophies, were photographs of 5 boys, including Marcus, all red-stringed to one central image, a face, blurred, shadowed, half-human, half-static. Below it, written in faded ink, the other echo. Kenya stared, breath caught in her throat, and then, from behind her soft and familiar, "You found my room." She turned. No one there. But the mirror above the chair lit up, not with light, with motion, a reflection. Her own except not. Her face, but distorted, the eyes too dark, the smile too wide. And then it whispered, "You brought me back." Kenya ran. She didn't remember how she got out. Didn't remember the crawl space or stairs, or pushing through the mirror's frame. She only remembered bursting into her apartment, slamming the door behind her, and locking every deadbolt. Her knees gave out on the living room floor. She sobbed into her palms. Her notebook lay open on the floor beside her, and in her own handwriting, though she had never written, it was a new message. One echo remembers. One echo lies, one never left, and watches through eyes. The page turned by itself in the still air. Another message. "You are the 6th now." The words on the notebook page pulsed in Kenya's mind like a migraine. "You are the 6th now." She hadn't written them. She would never write them. And yet there it was, her handwriting, her pen. But it didn't feel like her anymore. She stared down at her own fingers, half expecting them to move on their own, to twitch or curl without permission. They didn't, not yet. She tore the page from the notebook, folded it into quarters, and burned it in the kitchen sink. The flame caught quick. As it curled black at the edges, she swore she heard something hiss through the drain. That morning, Kenya went to the city archives again. She requested building records, not just for her brownstone, but for every structure built on West Halsey Street between 1910 and 1950, especially those connected to private medical use. The clerk behind the desk was young, half-interested, and scrolling on his phone. "Only 2 buildings match that request," he mumbled. "Yours and some condemned spot 5 doors down." Was a home for fragile boys, apparently. Shut down in 1955. Kenya leaned forward. "Fragile how?" He shrugged. "Doesn't say." "Want to see the microfiche?" She spent 4 hours hunched over the viewing machine. Each slide felt heavier than the last. The place down the street wasn't just a home. It was a psychiatric training facility for echo-reactive youths. Her blood ran cold. One article from 1949 mentioned a pilot program in sound therapy, an experiment where boys were placed in isolation and encouraged to interact with auditory stimuli from adjacent walls. The tests appear to induce mirror delusions, but also show the ability to transmit phonetic signals through physical barriers. Subjects report hearing each other's thoughts and becoming untethered from the body. One phrase kept repeating in the research notes: "Echo state achieved." She flipped to the final recorded brief from 1955. Wing C collapsed during a maintenance excavation. 5 unaccounted for. Site sealed. Program terminated. 5 again. Not from her building. Not from St. Augustine. Older. Forgotten. Kenya whispered to herself. This didn't start with Marcus. And suddenly, she wasn't sure he was even part of the original 5. That night, back at the apartment, Kenya began to lose time. She glanced at the clock. 8:42 p.m. She blinked. It was 9:17 p.m. The stove light was on. Her shoelaces were tied differently. She was standing near the closet. But she hadn't meant to be. Something was using her like a puppet, with half the strings cut. Not full possession. Not yet. But a nudge here. A whisper there. Her reflection was different now, too. It blinked out of sync, smiled faintly when she didn't. And once, just once, she saw another figure behind it in the glass. A boy, no older than 16, head shaved, eyes sunken. He opened his mouth, and static poured out. Kenya dragged her mattress into the living room again. She didn't want to be near the closet, or the mirror wall, or anywhere the crawl space might touch. But the walls were louder now, breathing. The paint flaked differently, like something was pressing against it from inside. At 3:17 a.m., the knock didn't come. Instead, every wall around her began to hum. A low, guttural vibration that rattled the floor. The lights flickered. The TV turned on by itself, no static this time. Just one image. A door. Old, red, rotting. A brass knob scratched with what looked like numbers. Kenya stepped closer. She swore the number on the screen changed depending on her breath. It flickered between 2C and 6C, then stopped on one word. Open. The screen went black. And a voice, this time spoken aloud in the room, no longer filtered through static or ceiling, said clearly, "The other echo has found you." The bathroom door slammed. The mirror in the hall shattered from the inside. And on the living room wall, new words appeared in fresh, wet strokes. Only one can leave. Kenya backed into the corner, shaking. She grabbed her notebook again and scribbled. Marcus wasn't the last. The facility down the street came first. The real Echo 5 are missing from 1955. The boys at St. Augustine? Copycats or vessels. Marcus opened the way, but something else walked through. She wrote one final note and circled it 3 times. I am the 6th. But who is the 7th? Kenya stood in her hallway barefoot, breathing like she'd just run up 6 flights. The message on the wall was still wet. Only one can leave. It wasn't just written. It was dripping. The letters thick and black, like tar or old blood. It smelled sour, metallic. Wrong. She wanted to wipe it off, to paint over it, to deny it. But the moment she reached forward, the drywall pulsed beneath her hand like something alive. She yanked her arm back. That same phrase kept circling her skull. I am the 6th. But who is the 7th? The pattern was shifting. Whatever had been sleeping behind the walls wanted out, and Kenya could feel it choosing. She wasn't supposed to be a vessel. She was supposed to be the door. She returned to the box of tapes. She'd been too afraid to open the others before, but now she ripped through them like a woman chasing her last breath. There were 5 unlabeled ones, numbered only by deep knife scratches on the cases. She picked the one with 3, carved into it, and slammed it into the player. It hissed, scratched, then crackled to life. This is Dion Holloway. I hear them at night, the ones who failed to cross. They wear no face. They whisper your memories back to you, but wrong. They said one of us has to stay behind. One of us becomes the echo. One becomes the vessel. The 7th was never meant to be. Kenya froze. She rewound it. The 7th was never meant to be. She turned slowly. Her apartment. Her daughter's room. The crawl space wall. Her stomach dropped. No. She pulled out her phone and dialed Ayana. It rang twice. Then her sister answered, whispering urgently, "Kenya, something's wrong with Maya." She drove like the road was on fire. Every light blurred. Her fingers white-knuckled the wheel. Her ears were ringing, but not from the engine. A sound had followed her. A soft, chattering echo behind her left ear, like a tape rewinding. Fast, hungry. You opened the door for her. The youngest carries the clearest sound. She is the key. Kenya screamed at the windshield. Leave her alone. But the sound only laughed her voice, but wrong. When she burst through Ayana's apartment door, she found her sister crouched in the corner of the kitchen, shaking. "I don't know what's happening," Ayana whispered. She was sleeping fine, then she just started humming. Kenya's blood turned to ice. "What song?" Ayana looked up, pale. "It's not a song, just this note, over and over, like a dial tone." Kenya ran to the guest bedroom. Maya sat cross-legged on the bed, eyes wide open, head tilted back like she was listening to the ceiling. She was humming. A low, hollow pitch, 317 hertz. Kenya could feel it in her jaw. Her bones. "Maya," she whispered. "Baby?" Maya turned to look at her and blinked. Her irises fluttered for a moment, showing not white but static. Then she smiled faintly. "He's almost through," she said. Kenya rushed forward and held her by the shoulders. "Who? Baby? Who's almost through?" But Maya didn't answer. She reached into her pajama pocket and pulled out a mirror shard. Kenya stared in horror. That was from their hallway. From the one that shattered after the voice, said the other echo, had found her. "Maya," Kenya choked. "Where did you get that?" Maya smiled. "He gave it to me." He said the seventh is the one who remembers the sound before birth. Kenya gripped her tighter. "That's not him talking. That's not you." But Maya tilted her head again, humming that same tone as her pupils dilated. And then she whispered clear, sure, like someone else had taken her tongue. "One of us must become the silence." The lights flickered. The air went still. And from the kitchen, Ayana screamed. Kenya spun around and ran. Her sister was collapsed on the floor, face pale, clutching her throat, but not choking, listening, eyes wide, as if she'd heard something she wasn't supposed to, something that would never let her unhear it. And on the kitchen wall etched in frost, this time was a single phrase. "She hears the walls now, too." Ayana was still breathing, but her eyes wouldn't blink. Kenya crouched beside her, gently trying to lower her to the floor. Her sister's body was rigid, like every muscle had locked in place. Her lips moved, but no words came out, only the same low, pulsing note that had hummed from Maya's throat just minutes ago. Kenya cupped her sister's face. "Ayana, you hear me? You're safe. You're here. Just blink for me." But Ayana's pupils were darting side to side rapidly, like she was watching something only she could see. Maya stood in the doorway, still, silent, but her hands were trembling barely, like flickers of wind across candlelight. He was in the dirt, before there were bricks, before there were names, before anyone forgot. The air turned sour. Kenya could feel it in her mouth like wet iron and mildew. Something beneath the building, not just the brownstone, not just 2C. Something older. Something that had learned how to wait. Back at the apartment that night, Kenya scoured every city record database for anything about the plot of land her building stood on. Zoning logs, cemetery clearances, Redland housing maps. Anything. She found something in an old maintenance ledger from 1891. Parcel 23B, where her brownstone now stood, had once been part of the Hargrave Asylum Annex, a collection of underground sensory, study chambers used for soldiers returning from early foreign wars. She clicked through the scan. The annex had been condemned after a fire in 1896. The report mentioned auditory hallucinations suffered by men who had never set foot in combat. Some were discharged incoherent, claiming the walls spoke their names backward. Buried within that scan was a single faded blueprint showing a sub-basement 3 levels below street grade, labeled Echo Chamber, Alpha Origin. Kenya whispered aloud, "This didn't start with Marcus. Or the 5. This was here before any of us." And then she remembered what Diane said on the tape. 1 becomes the echo. 1 becomes the vessel. The 7th was never meant to be. The 7th wasn't a person. It was a repeat, an echo of the original. A cycle reactivating every generation, waiting for someone sensitive enough to listen. And someone willing enough to open. Kenya had been both. The phone vibrated. Blocked caller. She answered, breath shaky. "Hello? Nothing." Then, "What did you see?" It wasn't a question. It was a test. Kenya said nothing. Then the voice whispered, "You saw the chair. You opened the mirror. You lit the frequency." Kenya's grip tightened. "Who is this?" A pause. "I wore Thomas. I walked through Marcus. I waited inside your daughter's home." Kenya dropped the phone. It buzzed on the ground, repeating the same low pitch, 317 hertz. Her ears rang. Her nose began to bleed. She crawled to the bathroom, flipped the faucet on, and splashed her face. When she looked in the mirror, it wasn't her. The reflection stared back. Same skin, same eyes, same jaw. But the smile was older, and it whispered, perfectly in sync with her mouth, "The only way to silence an echo is to answer it." She stumbled back, hand clamped to her mouth. In her reflection's hand, something glinted. A key. Not just any key. The old brass one Drayton had used. The one that opened 2C. But the teeth of it were melted, like it had been used on something it should never unlock. And then, carved into her reflection's neck, as though tattooed with a rusted blade, were 7 numbers. 1,896,173. She repeated them aloud. 1896, 173. The year of the fire. The floor of the chamber. The number of echoes? No, not echoes. Victims. Kenya stared at the mirror until it went black again. Her voice trembled as she whispered to the dark glass, "Where is the original chamber?" And the mirror answered, but not in sound, in smell. A rush of mildew and burning hair filled her nose, and a faint image formed in the glass. A door. Not the one from before. This one was iron. Bent, scorched, buried, stamped in the center. Echo infinity. The iron door burned itself into Kenya's mind. She saw it even with her eyes closed, scorched, heavy, rusted shut, and waiting. The infinity symbol etched beneath the word ECHO wasn't stylized or abstract. It was jagged, brutal, carved like a warning left by someone who didn't survive the telling. She'd seen symbols like that before. Years ago, in a drawing Maya brought home from preschool. Just scribbles then. 2 loops, overlapping lines. She thought it was just crayons and imagination. But now she knew. The symbol was remembered. It didn't originate. It returned. And it was inside her child's mind long before any of this began. The next morning, Kenya returned to her building with 2 goals. Find the sub-basement. End whatever this was. Before Maya was taken from her completely. She carried her father's old crowbar, a portable floodlight, and a backpack of essentials. A notebook, 3 cassette tapes, 2 small mirrors, and Maya's teddy bear Threadbare, still warm from sleep. The apartment building felt emptier than ever. The hallway smelled of old rain and plaster. The lights buzzed overhead like dying insects. She passed 2C's closed door and didn't even flinch, because today she was going beneath it. to the Alpha origin. She started in the boiler room. The maintenance plans had hinted at an older sub-foundation, a leftover from the original structure before the brownstone's conversion in the 1940s. The floor was warped, covered in dust, but the brick seam near the back wall didn't match the others. She tapped her crowbar to it. Hollow. She pried one brick loose, then another, until a gust of freezing, mold-slick air hit her in the face. She aimed her flashlight through the hole and found a narrow stone stairwell spiraling down. Each step was carved, not poured, older than concrete, older than pipes, older than Brooklyn. She whispered to herself, echo state achieved, and stepped inside. The stairs led her to a pitch-black corridor of stone and silence. Every sound echoed 5 times before fading. She began counting each reverberation out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But on the 6th, something else answered. A breath. Not hers. She stopped walking. Behind her, nothing. Ahead of her, a faint red glow. She moved forward, slowly, 1 foot at a time, until the tunnel opened into a circular chamber. Wide, domed, the ceiling coated with soot and carved symbols. At the center stood the door from the mirror vision. Echo infinity. It was real. Not just real humming. A low vibration thrummed through the stone, as though the door itself was alive and murmuring its own name through time. She stepped closer, hand trembling as she reached out. Her fingers brushed the surface hot, impossibly hot, but no flame. And then it spoke not aloud, but inside her. There is no echo without origin. There is no origin without invitation. You opened the way. You must choose the silence. Kenya stumbled back. No, I didn't invite this. I was trying to stop it. I just wanted to protect her. You remembered. That was enough. She turned to run, but the chamber was different now. No exit, just the door. Behind her, one of the mirrors in her backpack cracked on its own. Then the teddy bear slipped from the zipper. It hit the floor and bled. Thick, black liquid poured from its seams. Kenya dropped to her knees, hands over her mouth. No, 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 no. The bear twitched. Then a voice came from its tiny mouth. Maya's voice. Mommy, he's inside me. I'm holding him back. But I'm getting tired. You have to shut the door. Kenya screamed into the silence. How? And the bear whispered. Answer him. The infinity door pulsed again. The symbol glowed red. She crawled toward it and screamed. I remember. The door vibrated. I know the names. Dion, Rel, Marcus, Caleb, Thomas. Still nothing. She slammed her hand against the door. I saw the room. I know what you are. And then, softly, from behind the door, a voice whispered, and speak my name. Kenya froze. The walls of the chamber rumbled. Dust fell. Stones cracked. The voice repeated, lower this time, closer. Speak the origin. Speak what no one else remembered. She dug in her pocket, pulled out her notebook, the numbers she saw in the mirror. 1 million. She turned them over in her head like puzzle pieces. What if it wasn't just a year and code? What if it was an anagram? She scribbled the numbers again, repeating the sound. 1-8-9-6-1-7-3. The humming intensified. She turned the 7 into a G, the 3 into a backwards E. Her hand moved on its own. Singe. Night. 7, 3, 1. June 9th. 8. That didn't work. Then something clicked. She rearranged the numbers backwards. 3716198. Still nothing. Until she noticed one word that could be pulled from those digits. Ganesh. She whispered it aloud. The chamber went still. She said it louder. Ganesh. The door flared red, the symbol burning hot. From behind it, a sound wailed. Not a scream, not a growl. A chorus of all the missing voices. And one last whisper. You said my name, but will you give me yours? The red symbol on the door flared like an open wound. The chamber shook. Stone dust rained from above, and the vibration in the floor rose up through Kenya's spine like a scream she couldn't voice. Her heart raced. Her fingers twitched. And the voice behind the iron grew softer now, seductive, not threatening. You called me by name, Kenya. Now give me yours. She clutched her chest, breath torn in halves. No. It's the only way to seal the echo. You opened the door with remembrance. Now seal it with sacrifice. No. You called me forth to save your child. Now give me what you carried into this world. Give me your name. Kenya backed away, knuckles white against her crowbar. The air grew hotter. The chamber walls began to bend, not visually, but physically. The edges of the stone ceiling bowed like ribs collapsing. The world was folding in. She looked down at the teddy bear. It was still bleeding. And inside the pooling blackness, Maya's voice rose again, clearer this time afraid. Mommy, don't say your name. That's how he finds the next one. Kenya dropped to her knees. Maya, baby, I hear you. You can't give it to him. He gave it to Marcus. Marcus gave it to the walls. The walls gave it to me. If you give it now, he becomes real. Kenya's mind flashed. The image of Marcus in the cassette, the chair, the mirror, the reflection that didn't blink, the teddy bear, the seventh echo. This wasn't a haunting. It wasn't possession. This was recruitment. The echo didn't take names. It traded for them. Marcus gave up his name to escape something in the dark. The others followed willing or not. Kenya had traced the whole lineage unknowingly. And now she stood at the crossroads. And all it wanted, say your name. Just once. Loud enough for the wall to carry. Kenya gritted her teeth. You don't get to wear me. The voice dropped lower, rougher. And I will wear your child? No. She threw the crowbar at the door. It clanged loud and sharp, echoing 7 times before silence settled like fog. Then, for the first time, the door moved. It didn't open. It inhaled. A sharp gust pulled Kenya forward, as if the room had become lungs. And in the same moment, the air behind her changed. Cold, gentle, she turned. And there, just outside the boundary of the circle, stood Thomas Ellison. Or what was left him. His hospital gown was tattered, his body thin as shadow. But his face was clear, human, sad. He stepped forward, eyes focused only on her. I'm sorry, he whispered. Kenya stood frozen. We should have never let it through. But Marcus, he was afraid. He wasn't the door. I was. I gave up my face. Caleb gave up his voice. Dion gave up his memories. But Marcus, he looked at the teddy bear on the floor. Marcus gave up your name. Kenya's blood ran cold. What? Thomas stepped closer, shaking. He gave the echo your name before you were born. That's how it knew. That's how it's always known. You were the last loop. You were the only one born close enough to the wall while he was still inside it. Your name's not just yours anymore. It's the echo's property now. Kenya dropped to her knees. No, no, no. That's not possible. I didn't choose to open it. You didn't have to. He whispered it to you. You grew up hearing it. And now it wants your full consent to seal the bond. Kenya's hands trembled. What do I do? Thomas closed his eyes. Seal the loop another way. How? He reached into his chest and pulled out a piece of mirror. Every echo needs a reflection. That's how it survives. You destroy the reflection, you trap the sound. Kenya grabbed the mirror shard from him. What happens to you? Thomas smiled faintly. I haven't been me for decades. He turned, faced the door. I'll give you a minute. and he stepped into the echo infinity doorway. The chamber screamed, stone bending, red light searing, the voice inside shrieking. "No, you gave me her. She's mine. Her name is mine." Kenya clutched the shard and stepped into the circle. She faced the iron. Her reflection shimmered on its molten surface her face, blinking wrong, smiling too wide. She raised the mirror. "My name isn't yours," and smashed it against the door. Glass burst, blood sprayed from her palm, but the sound stopped. For the first time in days, the chamber was silent. Dead silent. She looked down. The door's symbol infinity was cracked, and inside it, just faintly, was a new one. No name. She looked down at her bleeding hand. The cut ran deep, but her grip was still hers. She whispered, "Not today." The cracked echo door stood before her like a dead heart still warm, but no longer beating. The glowing symbol had gone dim, faded from infinity to zero. The sound in the chamber replaced with something almost more terrifying. Stillness. Kenya collapsed to her knees, the mirror shard still in her hand, blood trailing down her wrist in rhythmic hot pulses. The echo was gone. Or sealed. Or sleeping. She didn't know. She only knew that for the first time in weeks, the silence didn't feel listening. It felt empty, and empty was a mercy. She crawled back toward the stairwell. Behind her, the walls held. No movement, no breathing. Only that scorched iron door quiet, shut, and cracked. Thomas had never returned, but maybe that was the point. He had stayed where Marcus never did. One became the echo, one became the silence, and she had refused to become either. Back upstairs, dawn seeped through the city skyline like a soft apology. Kenya parked outside Ayana's apartment, her bloody hand wrapped in gauze, her eyes red but steady. She hadn't slept, but she was awake in a way she hadn't been in years. She knocked. Ayana answered, tired, pale but alive. "Kenya," she whispered, like saying her name made her real again. Kenya smiled faintly. "Is she okay?" Ayana nodded, stepping aside. Maya sat on the living room floor, her back to the TV. She was drawing in soft green crayon, humming softly, but this time it wasn't the tone. It was a real melody. A lullaby. "Maya," Kenya said, kneeling slowly. Her daughter turned, and her eyes were hers again. No static, no flicker, just warm, tearful relief. "Mommy," she said, launching into her arms. "He's gone. The man in the wall is gone." Kenya held her close, burying her face into Maya's soft curls. "Yeah, baby," she whispered. "He's gone." They sat like that for a long time. Maya didn't ask what happened. Kenya didn't explain. There were some names you didn't say, some echoes you didn't answer. Weeks passed. Kenya sold the apartment to a development firm looking to gut and flip the building. She didn't argue. She didn't explain the chamber or the broken mirrors or the patched-up closet wall. She just took the check and left. She and Maya moved to the other side of the city, closer to Ayana, closer to sun, to trees, to space. The new place had no shared walls, just sky. But Kenya kept one thing from the old apartment. Tucked in the back of her closet, behind sweaters and boxes of Maya's baby clothes, sat a small black cassette labeled Echo Test, Wall Session 2. She never played it again. But she never threw it away, because she knew silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the space between names, and some names are still waiting to be heard. Not every story ends with justice. Some just stop where the paperwork does. But if you listened closely, this wasn't just about what happened. It was about what we ignore, the assumptions we let slide, the voices we tune out because they don't come in the right tone. Somewhere, someone's living with the fallout of this story, not as a headline, but as their everyday. So if this story stayed with you, don't let it fade. Shine it forward. Ask more. Doubt what's too quiet. Because what we choose to see or not see decides what happens next. Like, comment, share, not for clicks, but for clarity. Because awareness is how silence breaks and how truth finds daylight.